What's the worst experience you've had with a roommate? Story 1.
Freshman year of college, she came back drunk night 5 and peed on our carpet and some of my clothes. Then in the morning she denied all of it despite the room smelling like pee. She would have random guys over constantly and screw them with me in the room. She ended up getting arrested twice during the first semester. She was pure chaos and ended up in academic poor standing since she literally never went to class. The second semester her parents required her to come home every single weekend, so it made things much nicer. What a way to start my college experience, lol.
Story 2.
I let my boss crash at my second apartment about 15 years ago. It was a shitty timeshare call center where everyone did drugs and were pretty everyman types, so he and I were more friends than coworkers. Anyway, he loses his apartment and asks to stay with me for a couple months while he gets back on his feet, and I agree. He's a great dude. Kind, smart, funny, confident, and a solid 350 pounds. I only mention the weight because it's relevant to the negative experience. So around a month into staying with us, he decides to get clean from his crippling opioid addiction. He's decided to cold turkey from a 20-a-day 10 milligrams hydrocodone habit, which is pretty intense. I advised rehab, but he elected to lie on the couch in my living room for weeks, sweating his ass off and shaking under a blanket. The reason why his size was relevant: he sweat a lot already and had to take pains to mitigate his body odor on normal days, but with the withdrawals and being mostly sedentary on that textile couch for weeks, the apartment started to smell like a hot-ass forest. It was a party house with a revolving door, and people just kinda stopped coming during his tenure there. Even with my bedroom down the hall's door closed, the stench was pervasive. It wasn't his fault. I liked the man, and he was trying to better himself and his life, so I put up with it. And he succeeded. Got himself a new place in the agreed time frame, stayed clean, and everything was hunky-dory. After he moved out, my actual roommate and I carried the couch to the parking lot dumpster, and it took several days to air out the smell. We even did a thermal fog with an oil-based cherry-scented counterfactant, and it still didn't help. Kinda irrelevant, but just an addendum: we stayed in touch for a while back when I still had Facebook, and he got his life together. Got a good job as a realtor, lost a lot of weight, had a baby girl, found religion, or whatever. Then after a few years of being off Facebook and radio silence, I get a call from my old roommate saying that he'd relapsed and died from a heroin overdose. Pretty fucked. R.I.P. Don.
Story 3.
Lived in a house share for 7 years, so have a few stories. 2 that are tied for the worst. First was a guy who had skin issues, refused to get help, shed flakes everywhere, shower, sink, toilet. Ended up in the washing machine too when he did his washing, which ultimately ended up in everyone else's clothes when they did washing. I felt sorry for the dude, super intelligent, kind, happy and friendly. Just didn't look after himself. Second was a guy who lied about his job, never went to whatever it was, and regularly got up during the early hours to randomly scream at the top of his lungs and bang all the walls, the floor and ceiling in his room to ensure it woke everyone up. Hated the dude for this, and hated the fact he used my car as a bench when we went out to smoke. Would roll his eyes at me when I politely asked him to not sit on my car.
Story 4.
This crazy, entitled, hypocritical spoiled brat of a person I was assigned in a college apartment. Everything was fine until I offered to buy a wireless router for all 3 of us to share. She agreed to split the cost, but then when it came out to $20 each, she threw a huge fit. She refused to pay, so I refused to give her the password. She got in my face and screamed at me, but I didn't flinch. Then she took all of her stuff out of the common areas. Whatever. One day I needed to do dishes and her stuff had been in the dishwasher for days, so I finally just took it all out and put my stuff in instead. I came home to find all of my dishes in the sink again, covered in maple syrup. So petty and gross. Another time, I accidentally threw a single can in her trash can instead of mine. She came out on the balcony screaming at me and threw it off the 3rd floor, where it hit my car and dented it. The final straw that caused me to move out early. We all smoked weed, including her and her boyfriend, but one day she called the cops on me for it. Thankfully I heard her on the phone with them, so I took anything incriminating and left before they got there. Most of it was my boyfriend's anyway, but until then my place was cooler than his. I just left it all there until I was able to move. She also got in huge screaming fights with her boyfriend and smashed his laptop and phone, so I guess I should have expected the worst from her.
Story 5.
She never cleaned dishes and would leave them until they get really moldy like multicolor colonies that are 4 inches tall. Everybody used to do her dishes, but then we stopped and kept putting them on her bed. To which she put the fucking dishes on the ground of her bed. She was a proud alcoholic and would constantly cause issues around the house as well as lock other roommates out and barricade doors if someone made her upset. Baby shit. And another different one the year after was some kid who was generally a nuisance, but one night he got kicked out of a party and drove his car into a few other cars in the lot, a couple people, and drove right into an apartment complex, busting the gas pipes so they had to literally move people out into hotels for a while. He turned himself in the next day. Edit, this was posted on Barstool, which is I think a national social media page. I don't want to reveal location, but don't believe me, you can find it. If you do, all these stories make a lot of sense based on location, lol. And another one was a guy who was kinda normal, but one day he came home looking late for something and said, "Yo man, I gotta go for a little while, you can use my parking spot and can have girls over." Either that night or the following day, I got a couple messages on Facebook asking if I was this guy's roommate, to which I said yes, and they informed me he tried raping someone and threatened to kill because she didn't put out, and were asking if I knew where he went or what car he drove. Wild shit. I was trying to get out of my lease so damn bad after that. He was a menace to many girls who ended up posting all their messages and encounters, to which they were all gross.
Story 6.
My parents let a 21-yo move in. He smells like shit, like sour shit. His room smells up the hallways, his food smells up the house and covers the kitchen in thick layers of oil which he smears around to clean. Whatever he's putting down the sinks turn them yellow. He pees on part of the toilet I didn't think were possible to get to, not to mention all over the floor and in the shower without rinsing. He hits himself all day and night and shouts. I think he is mentally ill and he hardly speaks English and asks my parents for rides everywhere even though we are 3 blocks away from stores. Including talking them into taking him 3 hours north to visit his cousin even though there's buses that make that route daily. He's scared of the vacuum so our carpet is matted down in his room. He will stop what he's doing to watch me go up the stairs. He'll stands and walks inches behind us while going up the stairs just to go back down again. He eats our food although it's labeled and lies to our faces that he bought it while eating our food in front of us. He talks over me every single time I open my mouth. He lets my reactive dog out of my room and takes her on walks when no one is home and feeds her parts of everything he makes and yells at her when she begs for food or barks, plays with her by pretending to bop her on the head and grab her tail and paws. Tries to pick her up by her paws or hips. I can go on but I'm getting angry. After 8 months of asking him to get his shit together, I've moved out. For my sanity and my dog's safety.
Story 7.
My best friend to this day. He decided he wanted to invite some folks over and do shrooms for the first time. I wasn't a fan of a lot of people over, but it was 4 ladies and I wasn't about to ruin a fun night for him. I was already with someone, so I planned on just staying in my room and checking in on everyone from time to time. Well, at some point I started hearing some wild-ass sounds. I go into the living room and they had taken everything that was a circle and tossed it into a pile. Everything. I'm talking round fruits, pots and pans, lids to Tupperware, all 100 plus DVDs I had, you name it. The amount of stuff that was broken sent me into one of those rages where you go from red to just gray. I went and stayed at my girlfriend's place. The next day I get home and they were all fully naked asleep on the kitchen floor. He still apologizes to this day, and it cracks me up because it's always the same line. I still feel terrible, but man, to this day that was the best night of my life.
Story 8.
To make a long story short, best friend and his GF, who I had been friends for years, moved in with me. She wasn't the most mentally stable person, but she tried. COVID happened, her bipolar started acting up and eventually stopped taking her meds. Cheated on my best friend and even made him drive her to the dude's place, saying she was hanging out with a friend after work. She gets caught. Tries to end it ODing. We have to forcibly intern her in a state mental facility. Comes back semi-stable for 3-ish months, but my friend was devastated and losing it. They move out and break up within 1 year. The manic period before interning her lasted about 3 months. In that time she stopped showering for up to a week at a time, kept yelling and berating everyone, started abusing Adderall and started hitting on me and sending me suggestive pictures. It was fucking hell till she got kinda better and moved out. She was so dirty I ended up with a roach and ant infestation that took months to clear out.
Thank you for watching, and please drop a like for more.